All right. Well, welcome into another episode of Chiefs Focus Live. We have a full show today. We're going to talk about this Eagles game. It's not going to be a very fun show, I don't think, but we'll
No.
try. My name is Quentin Morris. We got Thiz running the show, and now a guy who needs to self scout himself. It's the old man, JP.
Well, that was the highlight of my Tuesday. So, how are you doing?
Man, last night just had like a headache, and it was more than just the game. But I was just like, I can't do it. I know, and
Yeah,
I spent all day just thinking about this game,
yeah.
and I've got some thoughts here. So let's just I'm just gonna let you go ahead and talk, and then I'm gonna go through some of my bullet points after you get done talking. And I just want this to be a straight up conversation. I want to see where you're at, and then we'll just go from there.
You know, honestly, I there's nowhere to be. I mean, it's one of those things that you're hearing excuses on one side, you're hearing people bitching on the other. There is no excuse. It's week 11, and they've yet to figure it out. The experiment's over. You know who's good in what positions. You know who's not good. Do you start off doing the right thing? You march down the field, you do a great job, and then you fall on your dick because you go backwards. And that's exactly what they've done week in and week out since the last Denver Bronco game. Really, they've done it all season. There was a couple of games in between that they played really well, but for the most part, you're right. We've only got 3 losses, and it feels like 10. I mean, it really does. It feels like 10 losses because of the way we played all year. We've been extremely lucky that our defense is number 2 in the league. I mean, we just, for the second time, in 10 days, we held 2 of the top offenses to really no points. And
Yeah,
honestly, if the defense wouldn't have gotten gassed by the third quarter because they spent, 40 minutes on the field, that would have never been a 21-point game. They did not score a passing touchdown. We did. They only had one opportunity or actually two finally, but they had really one opportunity through 3 quarters for their tush push, and that was pissing uh, Sirianni off because we weren't allowing them to be in a position to do it. Every third down that they missed was 3rd and 5, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11. Every single one of them. We gave them 2 opportunities to get into the end zone through 3 quarters.
yeah,
Really. 5 sacks, 14 pressures, batted passes, broken up passes. I mean, A.J. Brown, 1 catch for 8 yards. Now, we did allow, uh, what's his face to get 99 yards, but he had no touchdowns.
well, and how
So
much of that came on that one catch?
that's the biggest point. I mean, there was I think that 1 catch was 60 yards or something.
Yeah, so I mean, even past that, I think you're 100% right. I think this defense is fantastic. You're right. We've held the top two offenses, or at least two of the top offenses, to very little points. I mean, the Eagles were behind the chains over and over and over again. The 5 sacks that you talked about is the second most that that Jalen Hurts has had during his entire career.
Yeah.
Kansas City out physical the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
and it is extremely impressive how well Kansas City ran the football yesterday. They were averaging over 5 yards a clip.
Yeah.
Those Chiefs dominated on the offense and defensive line. I mean, it really is that simple. And I think that's what makes the loss even more frustrating
Yeah.
because you felt like you outplayed the Eagles for that entire game, except that one drive where the Eagles completed that deep pass. Other
Yeah.
than that, you felt you outplayed the Eagles. You beat them at the game that they do well, which is stop the run and run the ball. Kansas
Yeah.
City did better than that than the Eagles did on Monday night. And when you see everybody else play so well and do their job so well, it makes the loss that much more painful.
It
Trent
does.
McDuffie was playing like,
What a
oh
star.
my, oh my God, dude, Trent McDuffie is so good. L'Jarius Sneed, and I know I have my problems with L'Jarius Sneed, but he played awesome. Reed played awesome. I mean, you just go down the list of the defensive players, and it's like everybody that touched the field yesterday had a play or a moment where they contributed.
And I don't know if you noticed, Quentin, and I don't want to get on this bandwagon, but it does seem like we're targeted in a lot of ways. In fact, Mitchell Schwartz even brought it up, and I was thinking this. I said it during the post game show, but Mitchell Schwartz brought it up. The call on Snead was bullshit. It was absolute bullshit. That was not a penalty, but it was almost like the refs were told, "Hey, keep an eye on him," and they did. They took a touchdown away from Kelsey. They took, in fact, that PI call on him when there was another penalty for holding. They didn't even call the PI because it's almost like the refs were one dimensional there. I've seen national analysts say everything, the refs did everything they could to let the Eagles back into that game in the second quarter, which they did. There was no doubt about it. When we were up 17-7,
Yeah.
that was, I think, too much for the NFL to handle because everybody expected this big, tight, close game. It wasn't going to be that in a pouring down rainstorm. And then, you listen to the Eagles, oh, well, because of the rain, that's why Jalen Hurts got sacked 5 times. That's why he didn't throw the ball. That's not true. He didn't throw the ball because everybody was blanketed. They didn't run the ball well because we have a great defensive line. We are absolutely being targeted, Will. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. They don't want these games to be one-sided when our offense is not doing so well. And I think that's really a problem within the NFL. It may be something, somebody brought up one time, I'm not going to mention who it was, but a kind of a big-time guy brought up one time, this is all about, now it's all about betting. And maybe the spread was just not good enough with us beating them by 10. Because, I mean, we were favored by 2.5, I think. So I don't know what it is, but we were definitely being targeted in that game. There was calls that were missed constantly on Chris Jones. Omenihu was held on every play that he was in on. Every fucking play. It got very frustrating for me.
Yeah,
to
I
watch
think
us.
that, look, the entire all around the NFL reffing across every game this year has been bad, whether the Chiefs are playing or not. I don't like blaming the refs for
Well, I don't either,
a loss
and I don't want to
because
get into that, but
I
it
just
was
think
too
there's so
convenient.
much more to look at. It's better to look inward than look outward because looking outward, you're never going to fix your issues, and there are clear issues on this team.
But
I
do you
think my
think
first
one
point.
question though? One question. Do you think, given the fact that all these guys are very young, okay, just look at it from a different perspective. You got a bunch of one rookie and 1 year players, okay, or second year players on this team, and they see this go on. Not all of them have the fortitude to be able to overcome that adversity. When you know you're playing a tough football team, you know you're doing very well, and then they see Travis Kelce have a problem. They see the holding calls. They see the missed calls. After a while, I wonder if that's not just getting into their heads because they are young. I mean, you got 22 and 23-year-old wide receivers out there that are kids. And that's something, you're
Well,
right,
most
they
of the
have to develop
population
it.
is a kid to you.
Well, it's true, but I'm just saying they're kids that are going out. I mean, I know when I played baseball, I was intimidated by everybody, dude. Fucking everybody. It didn't matter what batter I went up against. It made zero difference. I was scared. And I threw a 98-mile-an-hour fastball at 18 years old. But it scared me thinking that, okay, I'm pitching against somebody that is fucking good, that's played in the major leagues, that knows what they're doing. I can just imagine what it would be like to be a football player because believe me, there's a lot of work that goes into being a pitcher, especially a left-handed pitcher, but there's a hell of a lot more work going into being a corner, a wide receiver in Andy Reid's offense the physicality of it, the mental aspect of it. I just feel like sometimes it gets to him. Kelsey's not been on his game for 3 weeks. I mean, it's pretty simple. He looked injured last night. He got up slow a couple of times. They're not using Noah Gray correctly. I mean, he was non-existent last night. I don't understand why the. I guess my point is that we have everybody that we had on this football team last year, with the exception of Juju Smith, and we have an addition with Rashee Rice. Okay, an addition. How is it that every one of these guys forgot how to play football? how to even catch a football? I mean, MVS wrote his own ticket out of here 2 weeks ago. Last night solidified it.
Yeah.
That was a perfect pass. Mahomes took it upon himself. Yeah, I don't understand that either. When the rest switched the call, that was fucking insane. And everybody, that Creed Humphrey call, how the fuck does a center get a false start? He did nothing wrong. Every center in the NFL lifts their head before they snap the ball.
I mean, I agree. I think the reffing, I almost said umpiring. You got baseball in my head now. I think the reffing all across the NFL has been bad. Don't get me wrong. I think that there was, missed calls and that stupid false start on Creed Humphrey. I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was stupid. But I just think that Kansas City has more things to look out for. And I think the first thing just starts with you get what you pay for. Kansas City decided to move off of a superstar wide receiver and not pay him $30 million, and instead went out and got a bunch of Jags, just a guy, and tried to move forward with that. And they were really betting on either Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore to take a huge step forward. They constantly talked about how Kadarius Toney was going to be a superstar, and unfortunately for us and for the team, it hasn't worked out. And the plan up to this point has been a failure. I am really, I will say this. I do want to be part. This team is 7-3. Like they're still good on this team. I'm not panicking. I'm upset at what happened because I'm a Chiefs fan and I just saw my team lose yesterday. But I do think there's still a ton of good to look on this team. I liked how they used Kadarius Toney in the backfield. I like that they were using him in the punt return game. So there are still a lot of good things to look forward on this team. It's just when you have such a big glaring issue, it stands out like a sore thumb. There's nothing else on this team that's bad or that's mediocre. Everything else on this team is so good that when you have one average to below average thing, it just looks like such a huge problem, especially when that huge problem is related to the best quarterback in the NFL and that he's going to throw bombs and place it perfectly, and all of a sudden your hands are going to get lubed up with butter and it's going to slide right through. So Kansas City is definitely going to need to address this in the offseason. But unfortunately for Kansas City, there's nothing you can do. This is your team. This is the 53-man roster for the rest of the way out. You're not making trades. You're not picking somebody off the street. Nothing. The only change that can happen, there are two things. One, you get Richie James back off of IR, and he starts to come back.
He was activated last night. They just didn't play him.
So I think that he could be, maybe he's one of those pieces that you can plug in, and he starts taking some snaps away from a guy like an MVS, and maybe he can start taking some of those targets away from Justin Watson. Okay? That's one thing. The other thing is that you just completely change how many snaps counts guys are getting. I still think that Rice needs to get onto the field more because he is one of the only guys that I feel like when he gets the ball in his hands, he can actually do something with. And the ball does get to his hands, right? But you get what you pay for. Justin Watson had the same number of targets yesterday as Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill had over the weekend. Yeah. That is insane. Yeah. That is insane. He should not be getting that amount of targets. He is not a number one wide receiver. He's not a number two wide receiver. He had 11 targets.
11 targets.
And he is not that caliber of player. Stop giving someone who is a 500-yard receiver and trying to make him a 1,200-yard receiver.
Here's
Stop
the
throwing the
problem, though,
ball to him
Quentin.
that much.
Here's the problem. He's the only one right now on our team that Mahomes trusts. And you can see it. You can absolutely see that. He's the only one he trusts. When you see your number 4 wide receiver get 11 targets, he had more targets than Kelsey. He had more targets than MVS. He had more targets than Rice. He had more targets than Tony. When you know and that's not just been this week. He's our number 1 wide receiver right now.
And that is, hey, look, and no, Watson, I got no beef with Watson. But that's a pathetic stat. Because you should not be depending on Justin Watson to be your number 1 wide receiver. He should be like your number 3 or number 4. That's where he should be. He should not be getting 11 targets against the Eagles defense. And not only he got 66 yards off of that. So it's not even like he got 11 targets and just and went for $105, you know?
Yeah.
Like he didn't do anything with it. So I do not want to see your mediocre to average wide receivers getting targeted 11 times. You need to spread the ball around. And I 100% agree that the reason he's getting those targets is because he's one of the few guys, if not the only wide receiver, that seems to continuously get separated. And he has the trust of Mahomes. But even he had a ball hit him right in the chest, dude. It hit him
but
right
he's
in the
not
chest.
in his defense. I'm going to say something, because in his defense, he is not and never has been an over the middle type wide receiver. He's never been that guy. He's your edge wide receiver that gets about 20 plus yards, and that's what he's good at. Between that 15 and 25 yard mark, he's fucking phenomenal. He's never been the guy that's been the quick 2-second shot 5 yards down the field across the middle. Never been that guy. He had to be that guy last night.
Yeah.
And like I said prior to the game, or prior to the show, right now, the way, if you really want to break it down, he's the only wide receiver that's caught anything. But in the same aspect, no team is going to fear us when you don't have wide receivers out there that can catch a fucking football. That's why Travis Kelce was covered by 3 defenders last night. Not 2, not double covered, triple covered all night long. Because they're not scared of anybody on our football team.
I don't know why you would play any sort of sophisticated man coverage against this team. Because if you're just dedicating, if you're doing some sort of, you're playing like a zone coverage and you've got what is essentially becomes a spy on Kelsey and a spy on Mahomes, you can't stop, or you can stop the pass offense. For the last, I don't know, let's just say year and a half, I've been talking about how the Buffalo Bills offense, and just follow me here, is too Josh Allen centric. Right? Yeah. It's either his hair's on fire, he's going to make a play, and that's all the Buffalo can do in order to win games. And luckily for them, Josh Allen is a very talented quarterback. Kansas City is now starting to fall in that area where it's becoming too Patrick Mahomes centric, except this team can run the ball, whereas Buffalo can't.
Correct.
It's becoming to the point where if Mahomes doesn't make the perfect throw down the field, and even when he makes it, you're not fully convinced that it's going to happen. And I am scary. Now becoming convinced that I almost want the defense to be out on the field with a 2-point lead in the last minute and a half of the game than Kansas City being down by 4 with a minute and a half left in the game. Yeah. Because I have more trust in this defense to stop any offense in this league than I do these wide receivers and the offense going down and scoring in that time. Kansas City has averaged 5.4 points in the second half.
Yeah.
Dead last in the NFL. Meanwhile, in the first half, they're one of the best offenses in the NFL. So the talent is there.
They're ranked second. That's what's crazy, is they're ranked second. Over the last 30 days, they have, in fact, the entire year, they were ranked second in first half offense. Over the last 30 days, they're ranked dead last in second half offense. Second half points. That's fucked up. No matter how you look at it. Look, everybody wants to talk about making adjustments at halftime. Okay, that's fine if you have a problem. We haven't had a problem in the first half scoring points. So, what adjustments, if any, need to be made at halftime to continue on the same trajectory? None. And they are switching guys up. They abandoned the run last night, which pissed me off because Pacheco
Yes,
was on
because it was working.
it was working all through the 3 quarters. It worked great, or 2.5 quarters. It worked phenomenal. And then they just abandoned it. There was no point in that. I don't know who's making these adjustments. I don't know if it's Andy. I don't know if it's Nagy. I don't know if it's the two combined. But those adjustments are not needed. Adjustments, for the most part, should be a defensive adjustment, and we don't need those. If your offense is working, why change it? Don't try to fix what's not broken. And every fucking game for 30 straight days, they have done the exact same thing. They go in, they fire the ball down the field, they look efficient as can be, they put the right packages together with the right players on the field, and then in the second half, they fucking blow it by putting the wrong people in the wrong positions and changing everything up. And that's a huge mistake. Huge mistake. And I don't know who's doing that. I really don't. I know Andy was pissed off last night. He went off actually on Mahomes a little bit. He screamed at him on the sidelines. And I was kind of surprised. I know Andy's frustrated. I get that. I would be too if I was in his shoes. I'd be very frustrated. But he was pissed last night when they called that timeout. He was pissed.
Yeah, here's another problem with the offense. Kansas City is -5 in turnover differential this year. Yeah. That puts them in the bottom 10, so the lower third in the NFL. In terms of total turnovers, they are 7th in the NFL in total turnovers. They have a total of 19. They are tied with teams like the Chicago Bears and the Buffalo Bills, teams that continuously have turnover problems. And unfortunately, Kansas City's 2 turnovers yesterday came in the red zone. Mahomes had that lob pass. I don't know where the hell he was trying to throw that ball, but it went straight to the defender. Yeah, he had Watson in the back of the end zone. Congratulations. You threw it right to a defender.
And that defender kind of dove straight in on that one, though.
It's a bad pass. It's a bad pass. It was a bad pass. It was a horrible decision. If you're going to throw that, you need to sling it in there.
Yeah, that's my point. It was a very slow pass. It should have been fired in, but I know the ball was wet, and I get that, and maybe you didn't want it to slip. So maybe he thought if he put a little less on it, it wouldn't slip out of his hands. I understand that part of it. If that's your mindset going into it, don't throw the ball.
Then lead him into the pass.
Exactly. Lead him into it.
We need to stop.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, they just picked his ass up last week.
It's so frustrating that both your turnovers came after long drives.
Yeah.
You were
66-yard drive
Kansas City had no field position advantage this entire game.
None.
I felt like the Eagles were starting from their own 45 every drive.
And we stopped him so many fucking times. Quentin, do you realize how many punts and 3-and-outs that they had? It was insane to think about how many times we just put the Steinmatz on their offense, and we still couldn't win. We still could not win that game.
And this is why I think that this loss is so frustrating, is that because you didn't get outplayed. Look, Kansas City's average yards per pass, 3.8. There's just so many things that you can continue to point to, and it's just not good enough. You had 168 passing yards on the day. At one point, with 3 or 4 minutes left to go in the game, Kansas City had the same amount of passing yards and rushing yards.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? He's got a good point. He said, wasn't Kelsey getting mad at the defense for trying to punch the ball out during training camp? Absolutely. And I bet Cochran's laughing at him right now because that was Cochran that did that. And I love Kelsey. Don't get me wrong. But that's something that you really should practice at and make sure you're holding on to the ball really tight when you catch it. Especially a guy that's been in the league as long as you have. And that's not the first time he's fumbled this year. So hold on to the ball, tighten up. You're going down anyway because that's your MO. You get the ball, you get your yak. As soon as the pressure comes, you bring yourself down. You don't allow them to do it because that's what's kept you in the game so long. Don't fumble the ball. Here's another thing, Quentin, and I want to know your opinion on this. We saw McKinnon more last night than we've seen in every game combined this year, right? I mean, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about it.
I mean, yeah, he
How
was
many
out there
times did we
quite a
see him
bit.
in the fucking red zone? How many times did we actually see him within the 20-yard line in?
Yeah.
3 times. 3 fucking times. 3 times. When I saw McKinnon trot out on the field on that interception pass, I thought, okay, this is a touchdown. There's no doubt in my mind this is going to be a touchdown. McKinnon's out there. Tony was out there. McColl was out there. Travis was out there. Everybody that we needed to be out there for that exact moment was out there. But what did he do? McKinnon was actually open. He actually, and I don't know, I went back and looked today. He could have, he actually ran a block and could have broke off that block to the right and been wide open in the end zone because there was nobody there. And he went right over the middle and got intercepted. This is a product, and it's I'm not blaming Mahomes because I understand that he's freaked out right now. Wouldn't you be if you're a 6-year veteran that has had success with every single wide receiver, including D-Rob, and then all of a sudden you can't have success with your best tight end because nobody else on that field is scaring anyone? I mean, there's Girl Scouts out there that'll play hard against this fucking wide receiver core.
It's crazy that it just seems like there's just nothing. And, you know, it's not.
I blame Beach for this. I'm just telling you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you're in charge of player personnel. You get credit for when it's good. You get crap when it's bad. And it's not good right now. You made a bad free agent signing, a bad contract, I should say, when you went out and signed MVS. Yes, it worked out for the first 2 years. Or for the first year, but now it's looking bad. You went out and signed Juju Smith-Schuster for a 1-year prove-it deal, and yeah, it looks good now, you know, that you didn't re-sign him because his knee was the size of a cantaloupe and about to explode. So it's good that you didn't hand out that contract for, you know, you didn't sign him to a new deal like a lot of fans were advertising for. But you didn't do anything to.
No, that's the problem.
And if you aren't getting better, you're getting worse. Right?
Yep.
Kansas City didn't do anything in the offseason. You know what they did?
They added Rashee Rice
and let Juju Smith-Schuster go. Then they added Richie James. That was it. That was the moves. They didn't do any sort of.
You know what that tells me?
Movement upwards.
That tells me one thing. Okay, first of all, I have been on Veach's bandwagon ever since he got here. He's done phenomenal things with this team. There's no doubt about that. I don't think any GM has ever done as much as he's done in the short amount of time that he's had to do it in. He's phenomenal. But what irritates me is that this year and this year alone, he put so much pressure on Patrick Mahomes that it's pissing him off. And that is almost a respect factor that he doesn't have for Patrick Mahomes. And that's irritating to me. Because if you don't respect the best quarterback in football to at least get him one decent wide receiver, spend a little bit of money. How the fuck do the Eagles go out and sign all these guys? How the hell does anybody go out and sign the people that they sign?
Well, it helps when your quarterback's not paid yet.
Okay, but even at that, you got to think about it. There's teams out there that are still doing the exact same thing that have paid quarterbacks.
Right now, we are in an era, and this goes with college football too, where you need to have some sort of a superstar wide receiver.
Absolutely.
Look, all of the good. I know we don't talk college football on here very often, but all of the good college football teams have 2 number 1 wide receivers. Yes. LSU, Washington, Oregon,
Alabama.
Michigan, Ohio, like all of these top tier programs right now have 2 number 1 wide receivers. And if we were to talk about some of the best offenses and overall teams in the NFL, you can make the same argument that they are stacked with offensive weapons. Maybe it's not 2 wide receivers, but you have a running back and a wide receiver, or you have a tight end and a wide receiver. Kansas City just has the tight end, right?
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about the Dolphins and the 49ers and the Eagles, like all of these really good top tier teams all have multiple positions, multiple top edge guys, and it's not coming through for Kansas City. And it feels like that nothing on this offense is coming easy anymore. When we look in the past, you know, if you gave Patrick Mahomes 2.5 minutes with 2 timeouts and you're down by 4, you were just leaning back on the couch eating your cheese doodles because you knew it was going to happen.
Exactly.
And now I'm on my edge of my seat just hoping that
somebody can catch a football.
When you run a simple hook and curl route for 5 yards, that you're going to be able to catch it.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because I know what this team is. And I'm going to keep coming back to this. This team is really fucking good. This team is so good.
Is.
There is one position group that is holding this team back.
And you know what the fucked up part though, Quentin, is that it's like with our football team, that is one of the most important position groups. We're not a run first football team. So we need to have, and look, man, I remember a debate on this show a while back it was last year, about rotating players in and out, the way Veach does this with not signing wide receivers, not keeping good guys. And I said, eventually that's going to bite him in the ass, because when it comes down to this offense with that quarterback, you have to have continuity. There's no in between. There's no two questions. There's no question about it. You have to have continuity. And if you continually rotate wide receivers in and out, and then also bring in rookies that'll never get this fucking system in a year, don't ever plan on going back-to-back Super Bowls. And this is the year that we're seeing that is biting us in the ass.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of this. I went along with it because Veach has done so well, and Mahomes in particular has done so well with developing below average wide receivers his entire career. But he has below average in some areas. Sky Moore should be a 7th, at least 7th on the depth chart. That's where he should be. It's that simple.
I only remember him being out there for like 2 plays.
Yeah, well, he was out there a few, but and I got to give him he had a catch, great, but he's not ready. He doesn't run the routes correctly, and it only takes one guy to fuck up the entire receiving core, including the tight ends, by running the wrong route.
It is the fact that none of these other wide receivers seem to be able to get open means that there really is not, and there's not a ton that you can do about it. And it's so hard to scheme open some of these guys. If you are not worried about one particular guy, I'm going to put as many resources as I can dedicated to Travis Kelce. And then I'm going to line up, play basically a picket fence defense, because I know that, your one guy that's your over-the-top guy, MVS, he's not going to catch anything deep down the field. So I don't have to worry about that. I can shift my safeties up, and I can play, the run, bring an extra guy in the box. It just, it stacks and stacks and stacks on it. But eventually it's just like, what are you supposed to do?
I don't know, man.
It's on everybody. It's on the entire offense. It's on Matt Nagy. It's on Andy Reid. It's on Patrick Mahomes, because he has 11 interceptions on the season. It's on all of the wide receivers for, every single game. All of these wide receivers have come out and struggled. Besides what? The Bears and Chargers, the 2 worst pass defenses in the NFL. So,
they did pretty good against the Jets. I'll give them that. They did pretty good against the Jets, and the Jets have a top 5 defense. And I will say they did okay against the Jets.
All right, let's take a step back. Let's just look at the AFC playoff picture, because, even though the Chiefs lost, Kansas City is still on the top of the AFC.
Yeah, because
let's talk about this. We'll be a little bit more positive.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about the overall playoff picture. So because the Chiefs lost, the Ravens are now number 1, as you see on the screen. So it goes Ravens, Chiefs, Jaguars, Dolphins, Browns, Texans, Steelers are all in the wild card spot. Okay, I look at that right there, and I feel confident that the Chiefs can still beat any of those teams. Any of those teams can come into Arrowhead, especially from 3 down, right? We've beat the
Oh
Jaguars 3
yeah,
times in the last calendar year. We just beat the Dolphins not that long ago, made Tyreek Hill look like an average human being. The Browns, their offense with a backup quarterback, I'm not, necessarily worried about that. The Texans with the rookie, Steve Spagnuolo can do whatever he wants against rookie quarterbacks. And the Steelers just fired their offensive coordinator for similar issues that the Kansas City Chiefs are having. So the only team on that list right there that, I'm worried about is the Ravens. And
I think they're a beatable football team.
and I do think they're a beatable football team. The Chiefs and the Ravens are very similar in a lot of ways. Good defense with questionable pass catchers. And Mark Andrews is out.
Yeah, he's
So,
out for the year now. By the way,
yeah.
he just had surgery, so he's out for the year.
So luckily, quote unquote, luckily for the Chiefs, is that there are a lot of other teams that are having similar problems in the AFC. And the ones that do have a ton of firepower, Kansas City has either played and beaten, or, they don't have a starting quarterback like Cleveland or the Bengals.
Or the Steelers, really, for that matter, because their starting
Yeah,
quarterback
so
is not really a starting quarterback.
I know that this week, starting from last night all the way up until Kansas City faces the Raiders at 3:25, the conversation is going to be about the Chiefs wide receiver group. And yet this team is still the best team in the AFC, maybe the second best team based on their play last night. And we just have such high expectations for ourselves that looking at this team, looking at what they did last night, you're just going to beat yourself up because you were so close to beating, the Eagles again.
I think the difference last night and what I noticed last night, and you're right. I mean, this team is so fucking good in every other area. Our defense, they talked about how great the defensive line and offensive line were for the Eagles. I said this prior to the game. I said this last year prior to the Super Bowl. They have yet to face a defense like ours. Even the Cowboys came close to beating them. It was similar, actually, in the way that they lost. It was a 4-point game, and it came down to the end. The difference is that it was a little bit more back and forth between the Cowboys and the Eagles compared to the Chiefs and the Eagles. But the difference that I had seen this year was our defense is so solidified that it really proved how fucking good we are to shut down both phases of their offense.
Mm-hmm.
Both phases. With the exception of the one long pass, they shut them down. They had no run game. 5 sacks on Hurts in the first half. 14 pressures on the day. The momentum shift came twice. There was a twofold on that momentum shift. The one was the Kelsey fumble, but I also think it was the turnover, the actual turnover that Patrick Mahomes threw. Those were the momentum shifters. I still think that the refs played a little bit of part and got into the heads of some of these young wide receivers. I do believe that. I don't think they're accustomed to that style and what they're getting when they go into this. There was multiple plays that could, that should have been called that weren't, or penalties, I guess I should say. Some that were called on us that shouldn't have been called, just to kind of keep them in the game. But what I did notice is that they were not, whether it would be rain, shine, 75-degree weather, it would have made no difference. Our defense would have held them the exact same way. If our offense, think about this, if Travis Kelce and or MVS would have had an average game, just an average game, we'd have won by 2 touchdowns.
And that's still what's giving me some hope.
Because me too.
Even though how bad your passing game was, you lost by 4.
Mm-hmm.
even though your offense played so poorly and none of your guys were able to step up, you only lost by 4. And there's no, good teams don't have moral victories, and great teams scoff at even the idea of moral victories. But I do think that you can walk away from that with your chest held high, because you were able to stay competitive despite the fact that your offense, looked like they were wearing jet green.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I was so frustrated yesterday with all of the rhetoric that we were getting from Eagles fans. I went after a few of them because they talked a big game, and they didn't say one. And I guess the funny part was is not even the Eagles page had a fucking thing to say until the end of that game. They had to wait until the clock struck 0 before they started running their mouths because they were scared the entire game. They did not expect the Chiefs to hold them to nothing. And I love that. And what I think can happen from this, uh, this can happen. Given the fact that we did that to the Eagles, and looking at the remaining schedule and looking at the playoff picture the way it stands right now, if this offense can get 20% better, 20%, all these other teams are already scared. Because if we can do that to the Eagles, we can do that to Miami, we can do that to anybody. They have to just get a little better. And yeah, I agree with Will on this. I said this actually last night during the PSF live show. What if Nick Bolton was in that game?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Fuck. I mean, Nick Bolton is a force. A force. And if he'd have been in that game, oh my God. I mean, that would have been, I still think we would have won that game. There would have been a forced fumble for a pick six.
it's
There would
it's
have been a pick six in that game.
it's frustrating, but I think with context, you should still feel good about this team because
I
there was still
do.
so much talent on it. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep going back to it. It's just how they lost and how close they were and how this keeps being the problem. But
Yeah.
you're still on top of your division. You're one of the best teams in your conference, and your division. That was your toughest game remaining on the schedule.
Absolutely
We've
now.
got next week we got the Raiders, and then it's Buffalo, and after Buffalo, there's no team above 500 left.
No. No, there's not. So we can easily, honestly, if we play, like I just said, if the offense gets just a little bit better, Kelsey gets back in his groove a little bit more. They put the right people on the field, like they did last year when they used Noah Gray a ton with Kelsey. This team is unbeatable for the rest of the season. But they have to, I still think they have to get a little bit better on offense.
Yeah,
If you want to go in, hey man, if you want to go in and score 30 points in the first half and not score a single point in the second half, okay. But just make sure the fucking defense is rested. I'm sorry, but that's right there is why we lost that game yesterday. Our defense was gassed by the third quarter, dude. That was a big reason why we lost that game. We constantly had them out on the field. It's hard enough to play 3 quarters of football in nice weather, but to play it when you're completely soaking wet on a sopping wet field and to be out there getting manhandled and still be able to stop a football team of that caliber, you're doing something right. Our special teams, I'm sorry, but they're fucking phenomenal this year. Butker, 100%. Best kicker in football right now. Nobody's better than Butker right now in football. He's got the longest kick or field goal this year, and he's made every extra point and every field goal through week 11.
yeah. There's
You
still a
can't,
ton. I mean, there's a ton of positives to look at
so
this team
much.
for. It
Yeah,
it's just that we have such high expectations, as we should. We have
yeah,
such high expectations that when something like this happens, it just feels like such a letdown. And look, we're going to talk about the game on Thursday. Actually, we won't
It might be Wednesday
because
or Friday.
yeah, we don't have to
Probably
reschedule that.
reschedule for Wednesday or Friday.
But we'll talk about the Raiders game, and we'll just keep moving on because you have to. That's what you have to do. You have to just keep moving on to, like Bill Belichick said when he got blown out. Moving on to Cincinnati. We're moving on to Las Vegas,
Yeah,
and we can't dread on this loss. That's how from one loss turns into two, and you just got to move on to play the Raiders and keep your eye on the prize, which is getting your number one seed and having continuing the annual Arrowhead Invitational.
exactly. Nick Wright, he had me laughing last night during that game. I got to give the guy credit. He's hilarious. He said, "I am not worried one bit about this or the wide receivers. I'm not worried one bit." This was prior to the game. After the game, he said, "The wide receivers might be a problem," but he really takes it with. He's such a homer, and I love the fact that he is because he's so invested with the Chiefs and he knows the caliber that they have. But you know who I was really surprised by was Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp said, "This was something that I was in fear of, and now it's starting to rear its ugly head." And he blamed Veach as well. He said Veach could have had D-Hop last year when he was available, but he didn't go after him. He could have had a couple of other star wide receivers, but he didn't go after him. I understand Veach's philosophy to a degree about not going after older wide receivers for giant money. But at some point, you have to make a team an offer for a guy that's 26. Just say like Terry McLaurin. We had an opportunity to get him a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We didn't do that either. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry on this offense would be fucking crazy good. The guy never drops a pass. He's always on target. He knows his routes. He knows what he's doing. But now he's locked up. Even if he wanted out, they wouldn't let him out. We have who we have, and we have to make it right. I will say this. It's the last thing I'm going to say about the wide receivers. I'm still putting some of this on the coaching staff.
Yep. You have to.
And I say that, and this is the reason why. When you know who you've got, I mean, again, I've preached this, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but you know who you have. The experiment has been going on since week 1. It is now week 11. There's no more experimenting. It's either you go out, you make the plays make the adjustments, put the right players in the right schemes, or continue to be mediocre on offense. Tony looked actually really good last night. For the minimal amount of time that he was on the field and was targeted, he looked good. He was great
and
in the
I
return
assume
game.
we're going to see more of him. Because after the bye week, there did seem to be an effort to use him more. So we'll see. We'll keep moving things forward, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah,
so
that's all you can do. I mean, that's it. We're gonna. Richie James comes back into the fold next week. He will be active and be on the roster next week for sure. He was activated this week. He just was not activated. I thought he was activated for the game, but he wasn't. He was on the inactive list, but he was active as far as the NFL is concerned. He was ready to go if they wanted to activate him. They gave him one more week. Okay, that's fine. I don't know if this was the best week to do it in. Maybe it was. Maybe given the fact that they were playing an Eagles team with a really strong defense, maybe it was a good time to keep him just on the sidelines one more week.
Yeah.
Get him a little bit more practice in. Get him back in the fold. That's going to diminish a couple of other wide receivers' snap count. Because I think, for all intents and purposes, he did really well when he was on the field until he got injured.
Yeah.
I
still think obviously he can't hit this number now because he's hurt, but I thought going into the year he could be a 750-yard receiver, and then he could replace a lot of the Juju Smith-Schuster stuff. And I still think that. Obviously not the yardage because, it'll be week 12 when he comes back at least at the earliest, but I still think that he can do it. And I mean, seriously though, I mean, isn't that all Kansas City needs? So maybe James is this a lot of the solution to the problem, and we won't have to have this conversation again moving forward, and Kansas City can go and make a deep playoff run because they added a guy to the room that can pick up some of the slack.
And think about it, man. All it takes, if anybody out there has ever been in a competitive sport and your job's on the line, all it takes is one guy to come in and really fucking show out. That's what it takes. You're always looking at the guy behind you. You're always looking at the guy that's sitting on the IR waiting to come back in, chomping at the bit, because you know that he's going to come in very competitive and play very hard. It doesn't matter what sport you're in, whether it's baseball, it doesn't matter. I mean,
everybody could use a good swift kick in the ass metaphor.
Exactly. I mean, that's what drove me. I'll be honest with you. That's what made me throw 6,000 pitches a week. Was I knew that there was people behind me. There's always somebody behind you that is trying to take your job. And I spent every day throwing pitches, 500 to 1,000 pitches a day. Not all of them were fastballs, but I was perfecting everything that I could perfect as a left-handed pitcher because I knew who was behind me that wanted to take my spot. That's no different than any other sport that you're in.
Hard work.
That's absolutely
talent.
True.
Talent fails to work hard. You're absolutely right. I have a shirt.
That's absolutely right. And I can't remember who actually said that first. Who was that said that first, Jared? Huh?
My debate teacher always said that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, there's a ball player or a football player that said that years ago, and it rings so true. I mean,
well, when you say years ago, that could be 1950 to 2023. So.
Suck my nuts. It's so true though, because you have to put in the effort if you want to succeed. And I got to be honest with you, man. I see Sky Moore. I look at him, and all I envision is McCole Hardman after the first year.
Maybe.
And you know why I say that? It's not that he doesn't have the ability. I feel like he's got that. He said, hey, it rings true. It's been around for a long time. He has that same demeanor that McCole had after the first Super Bowl. If you remember McCole's first year, he went to a Super Bowl. They won a Super Bowl. And then he kind of just started shitting the bed and getting on social media and not really being apologetic for anything. And then going out and spending a bunch of money. And it almost seems like he didn't want to work. He didn't show up to Pat camp. There were so many things he didn't do to improve himself. And that's why he got shipped off to the Jets. And that's why it didn't work out with the Jets. And he's back here for one reason only, because he knows the system. They're not utilizing him as much as they should either. He should be in the slot 80% of the time. He should be in the slot.
And unfortunately for us, only time's going to tell. We've still got over a month of football left. And, hopefully you're able to use this time to continue to get better. But
hey, that was one point I was going to ask you, Quentin, just real quick.
All right, let's finish.
Have you noticed something? Yeah. Have you noticed, and this is something that I've noticed Andy has done over the last really 5 games. He started off the year playing packages that were pretty complex. His schemes were complex. It seems like to me that he has dummied down these schemes for these wide receivers, and they're still not getting it. Some of the wide receivers, not all of them.
I do know, at least from reporting, that for like Rashee Rice, Sky Moore last year was taught the whole playbook from the beginning. For Rashee Rice this year, they tried to thin it down a little bit for him. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that went for the rest of the receivers. If maybe because you had a whole new group, you wanted to just make it as easy as possible for some of these guys, and so you could learn roles instead of the whole book. But I'm not sure how that is affecting that. Maybe it's because if Rasheed Rice, I teach you the inside slot, I teach Kadarius Toney maybe the outside, Z spot. If I'm doing that, is that hurting them? Did it help them? I'm not sure because we're not in the rooms, but I do know that was the reporting about midway through the season, probably about a month in, that Sky Moore was taught the whole playbook, and Rice and some of the other guys were only taught specific roles in the playbook.
It's crazy that when you really look at it from the grand scheme of things, he was taught the entire playbook and he still runs the wrong routes.
And maybe that's why, don't know.
It could be why they dummied it down for everybody else. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I don't know, but I'm kind. Oh, by the way, last thing, I'm kind of tired of hearing, "Do we miss Bieniemy a little bit?" No, we don't. Bieniemy is not the reason why this offense is not doing well right now. Sorry, but it's not. Sam Howell may be playing very well in Washington, but they have a losing record, and they're in a terrible division. And they still suck. So I don't believe for 1 second that it has absolutely anything to do.
Yeah, I think I would push back on that at least a little bit, because I do think that, there's a chance that the team's missing some of that accountability stuff. That Bieniemy, it was a hard ass in a good way, where, there is such a thing as having that guy that can hold people accountable. And, Matt Nagy, has a different personality. So maybe the locker room is just
He's
different.
more like Andy. He's more like Andy when it comes to that stuff. But Andy last night was not that guy.
Yeah, you're right. So once again, I'm not inside the locker room, and so I don't want to jump to conclusions on any of this. But I do generally agree with you, where I don't think that it's just, Bieniemy's gone, and so that's why the offense is doing bad. I just think that that's just too black and white for me. There's more nuance that needed to be there. But it definitely didn't help that he left. But
no, I mean, I don't know if it helped or hurt. He said, "Did you see Andy Reid yelling at Travis Kelce?" Yeah, I absolutely saw it, and I also saw him yelling at Mahomes. He screamed at Mahomes. I don't know what Mahomes said or did, but he was just screaming in his face, "Stop it. Just stop it." And I don't know what the hell he was yelling at him for. I don't know what – I think Mahomes wanted to – I think it was about – I know what it was. They called that timeout. Mahomes was waiting for the call to come in. And they were calling that timeout. He called that timeout, and it pissed Mahomes off.
Yeah.
Because the call didn't come in quick enough. And then Mahomes was kind of yelling at the sidelines, and then it got into a heated match. I have yet – look, man, in 23 years – I don't know that Andy Reid has ever been as pissed off. I've never seen him as animated with players as I see him right now. And that, to me, says a lot.
We're all frustrated with the same things.
Yeah. I mean, he said Toney and Hardman are getting chances, and Hardman getting chances at catching, running, and what else? Returning the ball gives me hope on scoring more points. That's true. They're easing them into it a little bit more. I think I agree with you. McKinnon and Kelce both need to be in the red zone at the exact same time. And yeah, Rasheed Rice has the second most snaps of any wide receiver behind him, besides MCFs or MVS, right behind him. And MVS has done dick all season long. That experiment's definitely over. He fucked his third-year option. He did that 2 weeks ago. He solidified it last night.
Yeah.
He knew it too. He knew it. He knew his days are numbered here. It is what it is. He's done. And I guarantee you, last thought on this, next year, I think Veach is going to think long and hard about the wide receiver core and where he can shortchange it and not shortchange it. The two things that he needs to do right now, he needs to extend Snead. He needs to extend Chris Jones. If you do that, you free up a shit ton of cap space for next year, and you can sign whoever the fuck you want to sign and keep the guys you have. Willie Gay needs to stay. That is, period. He needs to stay in this offense. He has to, or in this defense. He has to stay.
T. Higgins,
Snead.
Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley, Tyler
all those guys
Boyd.
are up next year.
All these guys are up next year, so maybe you can sign one of these guys.
And Tyler Boyd actually said he would come here, and I don't know if he's the greatest thing. T. Higgins said he would come here. he wanted to play with Mahomes. So you got a lot of guys out there that are going to be able to really step it up. Silver lining last night, through 3 quarters, Jalen Hurts had a 43 passer rating. That's pretty fucking strong.
It's a good team. It's a bad loss. That's all I got.
Got to move on. With that being said, we are going to change it up. What day do you want to do it this week? Wednesday or Friday?
Probably Wednesday. So tomorrow, we'll have another show tomorrow to preview the Sunday game.
Yeah, we're going to have to, let's see. Yeah, I'll move the midweek show up from PSF. And then we can do that tomorrow night. So let's do that. And I'll move the PSF show to, I don't know, me and Thiz will figure it out. Maybe 5 o'clock. We'll see. We normally do it at 6:30. We could do it at 5:15, maybe something like that. 5:30 our time or my time, and make it a little shorter show so we can do this one.
Yeah. Okay.
So, with that being said, we appreciate everybody for joining. Make sure you like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Join the PSF app. It's a lot of fun on the game days. We had Boo Boo Smith on for the first half of the game. He had a lot of insight. It was nice to have him on. He knows the game. He knows the team. He's played with all these guys. And he understands it. So it's always good to have him on. And he'll probably be on again against the Raiders because he doesn't like the Raiders. So with that being said, we will talk to you guys again tomorrow night. Peace out, everybody.
See you.